Welcome to Rules Enactments Intergovernmental Relations Committee meeting. Please stand for the pledge. Legislator Elner, can you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Legislator Elner?
Here.
Legislator Nasarino? Present. Chairwoman Agnizio?
Present. Number 3 is acceptance of minutes from May 16th, 2024. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 4 is approval for a budgetary amendment, 24A059, received from the Sheriff's Department. The ARPA funding reallocation. We are requested to move $875,000 in the school safety ARPA funding. Transfer in. John Tully, did you want to come up and speak on this? Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen. Is everyone tonight?
Good, how are you?
Good. Commissioner Lewis was unable to attend. It's his wedding anniversary
Oh,
this evening,
nice.
so being involved with the ARPA very closely, we figured we'd take this one.
Okay. Before we start, I just wanted to make a motion to accept the additional for 4. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes. Well, I think the sheriff's reallocation is pretty self-explanatory per Commissioner Lewis's memorandum. It is an internal shifting around of funds. As you all may know, the ARPA funds come with a number of guidelines and compliance items, and one is the timing. We have a deadline for encumbrance of the funds at the end of this year, December 31st, 2024, and the deadline for completion of projects is December 31st, 2026. With the timing in mind, we're looking very closely at the projects both within the county and those that are being done by the towns and villages that are subrecipients of the county's ARPA funding that the legislature granted to those towns and villages via Resolution 133 of 2022. The sheriff falls into one of these such categories in that they, due to vendors and other items involved with the project that they were looking to do regarding school security, they didn't feel like they could meet the timeline. So in helping them meet their goals, we're doing a flip-flop, essentially, between the general fund that was allocated to their capital projects and the ARPA funding that was going to the school security. And now the capital projects will be funded by the ARPA dollars. The capital projects are all ARPA eligible and ARPA approved, and we feel like they could be accomplished in the timing that is required.
Purchase orders have been issued for 3 of them already, so those are moving forward.
Now, so we're clear, my understanding is that they did try for the school safety, correct? And because of the deadlines, they weren't able to meet that requirement.
But the school safety is still on
You
the
do
table.
have it,
Yep,
yes.
they're just switching
Right.
the funding sources.
We're
And
working very closely with the sheriff right now, and he's fostered a good relationship with BOCES to try to facilitate everything through one central location.
Yes.
Him and his team have got a good plan going forward.
Very good. Is it over like 600,000?
It's over that right now,
Yes,
for
that's,
sure. Yes.
okay, for initiatives for school safety. Good. Good to hear that.
Nothing's being
Good.
left behind, it's just
Right.
switching it,
Being moved
taking
around.
those timing constraints off that.
Okay.
That's that one.
Very good. Any questions or comments? Yes, legislator.
So is it expected that once we get the buy-in from the schools or that plan gets ironed out, that we'll restore money from the general fund of the county budget to address the original school safety plan?
It's
accomplished-
already being done
It's accomplished
here.
in the budgetary amendment that Commissioner Lewis put forth.
So,
It's just swapping the funds
Okay.
from ARPA to general category funds that don't come with the same level of restrictions that ARPA does. So the same effort is going to be accomplished.
There's no reduction in funds.
Mhm.
It's just the source of
There's
them.
no reduction in funds for the school safety?
No, they're just no longer funded by ARPA
Okay.
to remove those time restrictions on the sheriff's office for that.
So this is merely swapping, just to be clear, this is merely swapping the capital fund projects with the ARPA money, and obviously we'll be using our budgetary monies to support the capital projects, and we're just flipping it. So
That's correct.
Yep.
with no fiscal impact one way or the other. So whether we covered it into the capital projects, and now we're using it for this purpose, and then using this for the school safety, we'll have those funds available.
That's correct.
Okay.
Those funds that will be available for the school safety coming out of the general fund will have to come before the legislature at the time when we know what the plan is going to be. I don't think we ever received like an exact plan, or, you know, we allocated the funds for an idea.
It's in the proposed resolution, right? It's in the proposed budgetary amendment right now. The sheriff is being very careful on operational security matters, but I'm sure that at the right time, he'll brief the legislature on the plan for what he's working on with the schools.
They'll still have to come before us. For
Yes.
example, with all these switches that, you know, like the towns have done, it still has to come before us for approval.
That's
We're
what's here-
doing that
that's
switch
what's-
now.
That's what's here
That's what's
tonight.
here right
That's
now.
what's here tonight.
Oh, okay.
That's what's here tonight.
Because I don't know if we know what the plan is for the schools specifically, is my question.
Well, that would be information that the sheriff would have to provide.
Or approving it without that. Well, we approved it already before.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
So
generally speaking, I could say it's
so we're
security
encumbering the
improvements.
money tonight, and the plan will unfold as it progresses,
That's true.
is my understanding. And I know that Carmel Central School District had adopted their own plan, so it might be very different than initially proposed, and I'm sure that we will be apprised of whatever plan comes forward, but we'll have those dollars are covered for that purpose, and maybe we'll save some money if Carmel did their own plan.
That's true.
Anyone else? Legislator Elmer.
John, you mentioned that it's in the budgetary amendment. There's just general numbers, there's no specifics,
That's correct.
none.
If you look at the...
I see the amounts, and everything balances out, but I just want for the record that there is no plan, and they have to come before the legislature for approval of that plan.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we know that. I just wanted to state it. I mean, they're
If
gonna
they
have to.
enter into any contracts, I'm
Yeah.
sure they'll keep the
Yeah.
legislature apprised. It was
Yeah.
monies that were already approved,
Yeah.
as far as I'm aware.
Observed, and we'll find
I just think it's very different. It was ARPA monies that were already approved, and now we're
Swapping out the use of ARPA with general
yeah,
fund funding.
general funding that, you know, services and things. We'll see.
It's the general funding that was already allocated to their capital projects.
Right. It was part of
I
the
could
plan.
give you a couple of specifics from the back of which might not be really obvious, but there's
On page,
the
first
capital
page of it.
projects. There's number 4 on the budgetary amendment backup. It says Sheriff's Department boiler replacement, Sheriff's Department gate improvements, and Sheriff's Department life safety systems modernization. Those 3 projects were the projects that were previously funded by the board through the normal capital process. We're swapping out the use of the general fund funding that was earmarked for those projects for the schools, and then the ARPA funds are going to that, because when we did the solicitations for these projects, we made sure that the solicitations included the requisite ARPA language. And so it's easy for us to comply and not lose out on the ARPA funding. So.
Okay, good. Anyone from the audience? Have anything? Okay, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to number 5 is budgetary amendment 24A060. This is the town of Phillipstown for the ARPA funding reallocation, a request to Garrison Landing Water District, Well 8 project.
This is another request in a similar vein of us, the administration and the ARPA committee overseeing all the ARPA dollars and making sure that they're in compliance. Other than compliance with deadlines, there's requirements for compliance with allowable uses for the ARPA funds, as well as procurement requirements. And occasionally a project looks like it might not be in compliance with some of those requirements.
Could you be more specific?
They may not meet the deadline, or they may not be one of the allowable uses due to the law, or they may not procure the project in compliance with the ARPA guidelines. The ARPA committee and our purchasing department specifically has worked very hard to assist the municipalities in compliance with those items. We've provided them a checklist that was reviewed by our outside ARPA consultant to aid them in the procurement compliance. But sometimes, you know, the towns and villages, they have a small staff, and they're, everyone's doing their best to try to comply. With regard to the town of Phillipstown, it's my understanding they had a project involving their drinking water, which was very essential to the residents of Phillipstown. And there seemed likely to be some questions with compliance regarding their procurement and one of the uses, which we thought was an essential use for the residents. So this is the administration's proposed solution to give Phillipstown dollars they need for that essential project, as contemplated by the original resolution that the legislature passed. It's just a slight shift in the original project, but again, dealing with the drinking water there and the Garrison Landing Water District. And we're proposing that the ARPA funds would be reallocated to a county project. And then we would do another exchange similar to what's going on with the sheriff's funding, wherein the county would then give funds from the general fund to Phillipstown to pursue their projects without the requirements that ARPA places on them.
If you'd like, I could elaborate a little bit.
Okay.
We, unfortunately, were misled at the beginning by our ARPA consultant as to anything involving, I'm John Van Tassel, supervisor of the town of Phillipstown. Thank you all for having me, thank you. So we were kind of misled at the beginning. Anything applying to providing drinking water to this small Garrison Landing would be applicable to ARPA funds. So we proceeded and we were purchasing water throughout this process. And a lot of water. We had a large leak and it was hard to detect. It was going into the Hudson River, so it's since been repaired. But towards the end of the process, we found on page 15 of the guidelines that you cannot purchase trucked water. We could have put the road in, bought the truck, bought the piping, but the water itself was not. So we tried to reapply, and then the ARPA consultant pulled that up, and that's where we are now, so unfortunately. So, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Well, fortunately, we could apply the same concept as we did the sheriff's department and just change and repurpose the money to make it work for the town of Phillipstown as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We would then, we're proposing to put it into county capital projects, again, that are already pre-approved for
Right.
ARPA. So then we could ensure that the funds are in compliance, that we could switch the
So it's
funding
still
for the
covered.
town.
And it'll give you sufficient time also.
Yes, them, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, for
Mhm.
Phillipstown, they would have none of the timing constraints,
Correct.
nor the eligibility.
So I have a question for the chair. So how do we channel this money to Phillipstown and how do we allocate it? Do we just handed over? Like, how does this actually work in terms of, I understand the concept and I agree with the concept,
Mechanics.
because it is the most efficient way to do it, but how do we, from a bookkeeping perspective, allocate the fundings to Phillipstown?
Well, I'm going to give a
Okay, we're gonna
disclaimer.
ask-
I am not the
All right,
finance
so-
person. If I were good at numbers, I wouldn't have gone to law school.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
That Commissioner Lewis is, we're still going to use the same project line in the county budget for the distribution of funds to the town of Phillipstown. That project line is just going to be funded by a different source of funds, and that'll allow everything to be relatively seamless. But when the auditors come back, they'll see that it was not ARPA funds that went to the town of Phillipstown, and so we won't be required to be compliant with ARPA for that distribution. Does that answer
Perfect,
your
thank
question?
you, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then from a legal perspective, we intend to enter into another agreement or amend the current agreement that we have with the town of Phillipstown to reflect that.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Legislator Owner.
I'm all for this and for helping Phillipstown,
Thank you, sir.
particularly, because everyone here knows water issues are very near and dear to me. But I have a question. So please refresh my memory, Jen. Who on the legislature is on the ARPA committee?
We have the auditor, Michelle Sharkey,
Okay.
on our ARPA committee.
Yes, Legislator Yonke.
I just want to be clear. We're taking 100% of the ARPA money back, but we're giving Phillipstown 50% out of the general fund.
Correct.
All right, just so
That's correct.
we're all understanding, okay.
And
If the
that's-
legislature wishes to provide a different amount, that is up to their, if you'd like to do a one-for-one swap, that's up to you as well.
I mean,
I had to say it, I mean.
The money, the
a pretty-
funds that are going back into the infrastructure line, I think it is the intent that it will fund a project within the town of Phillipstown.
the ARPA
That's
also.
correct, yep.
County, it's a
So
really good deal for the
essentially be
county.
made whole.
Yeah. It is
But it-
great.
It's a good deal both ways. I mean,
Yes,
this is county allocated ARPA funding that,
Yes.
we were sharing with the municipalities. And in the instance where you were misled or
Yes.
things happen, at least we can still use the money. The money doesn't get
Yeah, it
burned.
doesn't go back.
Right, and you can still get 50% of the money
Right.
back again, and seems like everybody should be happy.
Absolutely.
Great.
Win-win.
Owner?
Supervisor Van Tassel, is the 50% sufficient for you to complete the project?
Yes, we were able to work it with that, yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Legislator
I
Sage.
just want to give a shout out to the Commissioner of Finance and all of the towns and for making sure that we're not going to be losing any of these ARPA funds that are so important. I mean, it would be a shame to lose
Yeah.
because they weren't allocated properly. And so I really appreciate that Commissioner keeping on top of all this and making sure that we use every penny.
Legislator Montgomery.
As long as the supervisor's happy, I'm happy.
Okay.
This is great. And I just want to thank Jen for all the work. It's been a lot of back and
Yeah.
forth. It's been a lot of support from Jen and from John
The entire staff.
and the entire staff. And I've been apprised of all of the exchanges and kept in touch with everybody. And I really, the work that went into all of this and all these changes for all the towns is pretty much
Above and beyond.
Jen.
Oh, thank you.
It's a really good job at communication. It's really amazing.
That's the intergovernmental part of my title. Try.
Very good at it.
Okay, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I think
Good,
unless
thank you.
anyone has
Thank you
any
for your
other-
explanation. Very good. I make a motion to approve
Second.
budgetary amendment 24A060. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna make your meeting. I don't know if I'm gonna make your meeting. Is there anything?
So number 6 is a discussion on the opera update, which I think we just did, reallocations pending. This letter is from Mike Lewis, Commissioner of Finance, just considering the items for inclusion on the agenda this evening. It says we are not seeking any authorization at this time, but would like to provide you with some visibility of the request that are being considered that may result in a future proposal to the legislature. Members of the ARPA committee will be present to discuss.
And here we are.
And
Thank you
here
for
you
your
are.
service.
So I think we already,
These are items that are in this similar vein
Mhm.
as some of the items that we just considered and in the previous meetings. As you may recall, we mentioned that we set an internal deadline for reallocations among the towns and villages. It was a March deadline, and many have come through up to this point. So that is, since that is now over, other towns and villages may be in a position wherein they would like to request a reallocation internally of their ARPA funds for various reasons. But since our deadline is now over and we're getting very close to that December deadline, we are taking the position that there can be no further reallocations within the municipalities, but would perhaps like to offer them a similar arrangement that was offered to Phillipstown. As of now, I'm happy to report most of the towns and villages are doing great and they're on track for completion of their projects. And especially with the legislature's help in approving all of those reallocations that we had come through the last couple of meetings. And however, there are two that may need a reallocation down the road. But again, for good reasons. I'm happy to report, it seems like they may have a savings that they've realized. And so we may be coming before you again to ask for a reallocation into county capital projects and then do a similar swap or exchange, whatever word we want to use for it. And then the other item as well is the county ARPA projects. In the sheriff's letter, they couldn't be here this evening, but they gave us their permission to provide the letter for information. It's regarding the other $1 million that was allocated to the sheriff's office. And the intent is to use that for a project that supports our area's school children. And the administration and the ARPA committee are working on such a project. And it's not at the point now where we're looking for approval, but we just wanted to let you know that it's in the works as by way of an FYI, and that we will be coming to discuss it and seeking approval and permission for consideration in the near future.
thank you. Very good. Okay, thank you. Any questions? No? Okay, well, thank you for coming this evening.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Number 7 is FYI litigation report. Number 8 is other business. Seeing there's no other business, make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let me ask what this is. Is that it?